What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Bush coming at you solo today to bring you the Jahan Dotson Tail of the Tape, Jahan Dotson's rookie profile. As you guys know by now, if you've watched a lot of these Tail of the Tapes, we're telling the story of Jahan Dotson from start to finish to best inform you on how to handle Jahan Dotson in your Dynasty rookie drafts this coming May. If this is your first episode of the channel that you're watching, hit the subscribe button. 60-70% of you guys that are watching these videos aren't subscribed, so make sure you guys go down and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. Our Tail of the Tape series, we have a playlist on our channel. We have every player ranging from Malik Willis, Breece Hall, Drake London, all those guys, as well as their player cards available over on Patreon. And the link is in the description for that as well. On our Patreon, you can find our Dynasty Rankings Manifesto, which has our Superflex, one quarterback, Dynasty positional rankings, bucketed rankings by age, all that good stuff available over there. So check out the link in the description, patreon.com/fantasy stock exchange. Like, comment, subscribe if you guys enjoy this video. Now let's hit the intro. All right, Jahan Dotson, wide receiver from the Penn State Nittany Lions. This is his tail of the tape. Age 22.0 years old, 5'11", 178 pounds. Basic information, high school measurables, brief overview of his production. Four-star recruit coming out of Nazareth, Pennsylvania in the 2018 recruiting class, number 36 wide receiver in that class. Once he got to Penn State, modest production his first 2 years. Didn't really do a whole lot as a true freshman, didn't do a whole lot as a true sophomore in 2018. 2019, only commanding a 12% target share as a true sophomore player. His junior season, though, he really hit the scene, going 87 targets, 52 receptions, 884 yards, and 8 touchdowns with a 28% target share as a 20-year-old true junior in 2020 in just 9 games, too. So nearly 100 yards per game, nearly a touchdown per game. This caused Mel Kiper, actually from ESPN. He ranked Dotson as the number 1 wide receiver heading into the college football season this year for the 2022 NFL draft. So that was when I first got Dotson on my radar, because I saw this I'm like, Mel Kiper's huge, right? And he ranked this guy as the number 1 receiver in the class heading into the season, even though I already knew about Garrett Wilson. I already knew about Drake London. I already knew about Treylon Burks. So it caused me to be curious about Jahan Dotson's game. In 2021, he came out and he did his thing again. He really built up upon his junior year of production with a whopping 146 targets, 91 catches, 1,182 yards, and 12 touchdowns in just 12 games too. So another, nearly 100 yards per game with a touchdown per game. According to Grinding the Mocks right now, Dotson is currently valued among NFL draft circles as a fringe first-round pick. 35.6 is his expected draft position, wide receiver 6 off the draft board. And you guys can see during his time at Penn State, Dotson posted some phenomenal numbers against some very, very high-level competition as well. So that's basically the overview of Jahan Dotson's production. Now let's get into the 6 fundamental traits for wide receivers. If you guys have watched a number of these so far, I'm sure you know what they are. But if you're new, we determine these 6 fundamental traits to best show the basics of playing the wide receiver position, as well as what things correlate to fantasy production at the next level, and also things that are easy to evaluate, easy to cross-reference with metrics, so we could properly evaluate these players. And the first one is how well a wide receiver can run routes and separate from the defense. Now, this is your typical separator. Jahan Dotson, this is why the NFL values him as highly as he is, a fringe first-round pick. As I mentioned, he's got quick feet, quick twitch, athleticism, both at the line of scrimmage and at the top of his routes to break away from defenders. I watched 5 full games of Jahan Dotson in all 22 film angle. I do that for all the players that I've done these tail of the tapes on so far. I watched both of the Ohio State games, Michigan, Auburn, and Iowa. So high-level competition, all ranked teams that I watched. And Dotson, over the last 2 years, I'm not kidding when I say I can count on one hand the amount of times that this guy was actually covered on a route. Whether he got the ball or not, this guy was winning on his routes very, very frequently. And I'm sure once we get Matt Harmon on here to talk about reception perception, I'm sure he's going to rank highly in that as well. His release is absolutely a thing of beauty. You guys can see him absolutely baby boy Shaun Wade here and score the touchdown against Ohio State. He did this as a true junior in 2020. He ranked 9th in the class with an 87.2 PFF receiving grade in 2021, 32.5% college target share, ranked 6th in the class as well, and 30% of his routes run, he was commanding a target, which ranks 7th in the class. So overall, Great route runner, great separation, and it led to him getting a lot of targets as a result. Number two is hands, right? Once you get open, got to catch the ball. You got to make simple catches outside your frame, contested catches, catches through heavy contact. All that goes into hands. And hands down, pun intended, this is the wide receiver with the best hands in the entire class. I think Jahan Dotson's hands are the best that I've seen so far. And that includes, Garrett Wilson and David Bell, guys that have really, really good hands, but not as good as Jahan Dotson. I gave him a perfect 110 out of 110 in this category. He snags the ball out of the air. He has sticky mitts for a smaller receiver too. He consistently catches passes outside of his frame. There was 2 plays back-to-back against Ohio State in 2020 where he comes down with 2 absolutely spectacular catches, and you guys should be able to see them on the screen right now. The numbers back this up as well. He has phenomenal hands, and the numbers tell you the same thing. 95.7% on-target pass rate. So when he was targeted and it was an on-target pass, it was deemed to be on target. He came down with it 95.7% of the time for a true catch rate, basically. Third in the class in that category, 90.1% catchable target rate. So not necessarily on target, but just a catchable ball. Top 5 in the class, 90.1% of the time he was coming down with those. Only 2 drops this year on over 140 targets. Like I said, lowest drop percentage in the entire class. So this guy's got mitts. This guy's got fucking wickets. He doesn't drop a single pass, more or less, and his hands are a true asset to his game. Number 3 is yards after catch ability. And this is, how does a wide receiver create with the ball in his hands? Of course, we know sometimes targets are few and far between, especially if you go to a very, very good offense with a lot of talented players around you. You want to be able to create with the limited ability or the limited volume that you might get, especially as a rookie. And Jahan Dotson routinely makes the first defender miss when he gets the ball in space. The twitchy athletic ability that shows up when he's running routes also shows up after the catch, and he's able to do that and utilize that after the catch as well. He's not Treylon Burks. He's not Garrett Wilson in this category, but definitely good enough. I don't think he's a special, yards after catch wide receiver like Kadarius Toney was last year, Rondale Moore was last year, or like I said, with Garrett Wilson and Treylon Burks, who I think are the 2 best in this current class that I've watched so far. 5.3 yards after catch per reception ranks about average in this class, but solid considering that Jahan Dotson had 91 catches. So the fact that he's, creating that much yards after catch in total on that many catches is impressive. And also, he's mainly used as a possession target, similar to what I said for Garrett Wilson when I talked about his yards after catch ability. His average depth of target was only 11.4 yards. So this isn't a guy that was making his, hay downfield 15.5 yards average depth of target like Jameson Williams or like George Pickens, for example. This is a guy that was used as the possession receiver for his offense. So the fact that he was averaging a good amount of yards after catch per reception as a, out route slant type of runner, that is definitely very helpful to see. Only 9 avoided tackles, though, on those receptions. So like I said, he is solid in this area, but he is not special after the catch. He is a guy that is going to do some damage there, but he's not going to, break off a 70-yard touchdown on slants every single play. Number 4 is usage, right? How is he going to win at the NFL level? Where are they going to need to deploy him? And how is he winning in college? And in college, Jahan Dotson, I would say, was one of the most versatile wide receivers in this class. He was used as a versatile piece at Penn State, and they really did know how to get him in mismatch situations and get him open. 23% of his total snaps came from the slot. So he wasn't just a slot receiver, which we don't want to see, but he can play in the slot. If they want to, whatever NFL team drafts him, wants to use him in a mismatch situation in the slot, he can definitely do it. Downfield ability is there as well. We don't want a guy that just wins on short routes. We don't want a guy that just wins on deep. We want a guy that can do a little bit of everything. 19.6% of Jahan Dotson's targets came 20 plus yards downfield. So a guy that can definitely get downfield and stretch the defense vertically with his speed. Quarterback play was kind of a mess at Penn State, so his downfield production is a little bit off, but you can see him winning on downfield routes more often than not, and he was definitely able to contribute in that area of the field. Usage-wise, that makes Dotson independent of landing spot, in my opinion. That's a really, really encouraging thing that we want to see from these fantasy wide receiver prospects is, are they going to be completely skewed by where they go? Because last year, part of the reason I didn't like Rondale Moore was because he was like a gadgety wide receiver. And I thought he needed to go to a situation that was going to use him correctly. With Jahan Dotson, I have no concerns that if he goes to an elite landing spot like the Chiefs or the Packers, they're going to know how to use him. And even if he goes to a terrible landing spot like Jacksonville or the Houston Texans, he should still be able to win and command targets in a situation like that. So that is very encouraging for Jahan Dotson. That makes me more invested into him, especially if you guys have your rookie drafts before the NFL draft, because then he's not as dependent on landing spot. Number 5 is athleticism. So his natural gifts, his elite athletic ability. How good of an athlete is he? Because, I mean, certain guys in this class, David Bell being one of them, have some athletic question marks. But With Jahan Dotson, size is obviously a part of athleticism, and it is a concern for him. 5 foot 10 and a half, 5'11", 178 pounds. Being under 190 pounds at wide receiver typically is not ideal. It's a benchmark that we usually want to hit if we're talking about elite fantasy wide receivers, but we've seen smaller receivers in recent years produce big numbers many times, including Deontay Johnson and Jalen Waddle this past year. So I'm not willing to hold it against a Jahan Dotson too much, that the fact that he's under 190 pounds, because I'm not holding it against Garrett Wilson. I'm not holding it against Chris Olave, and both of those guys are under 190 pounds as well. And athletically, we've got a guy that ran 4.43 at the combine, so good speed. Many people actually thought he might be the fastest receiver there and might be running in the low 4.3s based on his play speed. So that's, the type of speed that we're talking about at this position. And the only concern about athleticism that I have for Jahan Dotson is, why was his 3-cone so bad? Because he ran the same 3-cone time that Treylon Burks ran, which is obviously not good considering the size difference between those two guys. And on tape, I wouldn't expect that. I'd expect Jahan Dotson, because he comes clean out of his breaks and he's able to make people miss, is probably a pretty agile wide receiver. But the fact that he had a bad 3-cone time is definitely not encouraging to see. Definitely a concern that I have for him, and hopefully it doesn't bite him at the next level. Now, the final of the 6 fundamental traits is their profile and their production on paper. So this is where the paper nerds, the analytics people, get their pitchforks out and they tell you why your favorite wide receiver prospect is a terrible player. But the profile is where Dotson loses the most points, and for a couple of reasons. Number one, the first bad thing about his profile is that he was not an early declare for the NFL draft. He is a senior prospect. He could have came out last year, but he went back for his senior season. Now, if he came out last year, he probably would have been like a 2nd or a 3rd round pick, and he has a chance to be a 1st rounder this year. So that is probably why he went back to school. And he also has a 20 and a half breakout age, which is in the 50th percentile, but it's not, as good as Drake London's or Treylon Burks, for example. And he's currently 22.0 years old. And then obviously size is a part of his analytical profile as well. And it isn't prototypical size for the position, but the good things about his analytical profile, which help me mitigate some of the other things, and why I think his analytics profile is probably better than a guy like Chris Olave's, who has similar concerns, is that we have a guy that has a chance to be a highly drafted wide receiver, right? A top 35 overall pick with a 90th percentile college dominator rating, 2 seasons of 28+% of his team's target share, 95th percentile in college target share. And that's why I'm not as concerned about Jahan Dotson's profile. Now, is it ideal that he's not an early declare? Of course, but I'm not going to hold it against him too much, because at least he was commanding elite targets. At least he was very, very productive in the final couple seasons of his college career. It's not ideal that he didn't do it earlier in his season, in his career, but had he done that, he'd be a Jackson Smith and Jigba level type of prospect that we're going to be talking about next year. So now let's move on to the subjective traits. Now, if this is your first video that you're watching of ours, subjective traits just means anything that you can't quantify. And you're going to see a lot of people argue about subjective traits on Twitter all the time. And I weight these less than the ones that I can actually quantify, like yards after catch ability, like route running and stuff like that. So anything that can't be quantified is a subjective traits. This could be anything from smarts, toughness, nuance in their play. All that kind of stuff goes into that. When you look at Jahan Dotson, he's definitely very tough. He's very scrappy for his size, but functional strength is something that I have a concern for him, because I saw him a couple times against really physical corners get knocked around at the line of scrimmage and stuff like that. So that is a concern for him. I know it's a concern for some of the bigger scouts as well. Sharp and crisp route runner. The nuance is there. It's something that I don't have any question marks about. Very nuanced, especially at the release point. So if he's not going up against a big physical corner versus like press coverage, I was really, really impressed with his hand technique and his feet. And like I said, with the Shaun Wade play, you can see his hand technique at the line of scrimmage on that play. And he's also smart as hell. Routinely saw him squatting versus zone coverage, creating throwing lanes for his quarterback. He really understands how to get open in the NFL and in college, obviously, too. So that is something that is encouraging to see. His subjective traits are definitely very, very solid, other than the fact that he might be a little bit undersized and his strength might suffer for that. So final grades, when we talk about how does this guy actually stack up with the rest of the class, based on a scale of 1,100, 913.75 out of 1,100 is how Jahan Dotson scored for me. That equates to an early 2nd round type of talent. Biggest strengths being his hands, his separation ability, his release at the line of scrimmage, football IQ, and his speed. Weaknesses are the fact that he's a late bloomer, age-adjusted production, all that kind of stuff, and the fact that he's undersized and his functional strength might suffer a little bit. But he is currently my wide receiver 4. I didn't expect him I didn't expect to have him that high coming into his film. It's almost the opposite of George Pickens. I expected to like George Pickens a lot more than I did after I watched his film. And I didn't expect to like Jahan Dotson as much as I do after watching his film. I have him as wide receiver 4 right now, just ahead of Chris Olave at wide receiver 5, just ahead of Jameson Williams at wide receiver 6. And him and Jameson Williams would be borderline the same if Jameson Williams had not torn his ACL. So this is a back end of the first, early type of second round pick in the actual NFL draft, in my opinion. When we get to comparable players, don't freak out with this one, but my comparison for Jahan Dotson is actually Elijah Moore. And the biggest difference between those two guys, I'll get to in a second, but we have an undersized wide receiver prospect with excellent hands, separation ability out the ass, and a guy that can command elite target share in college. So that is why they are very similar to me. The biggest distinction for why Elijah Moore was a first round graded wide receiver for me and why Jahan Dotson is an early second round grade is the fact that Elijah Moore was an early declare. So he had a better analytics profile than Jahan Dotson. He had a great breakout age. He was producing among the likes of AJ Brown and DK Metcalf and DeMarcus Lodge and Dawson Knox and all those guys. And he was more dynamic after the catch. So Dotson is basically a B+ version of Elijah Moore, in my opinion. Mono Ghost on Twitter, when I was tweeting out Dotson stuff, was like, he's Elijah Moore light. And I basically said the same thing. I'm like, yeah, he kind of is Elijah Moore light. So best fits, when we look at Jahan Dotson's best fits in the NFL, his pro projection, like Elijah Moore's, I think Dotson has what it takes to become a dynamic beta at the wide receiver position. And basically, our buddy Ron Stewart kind of coined this term. He's not an alpha build, right? He's not 6'4" and 220 pounds, but he has the ability to be a dynamic beta, a smaller receiver that can command an alpha target share. Deontay Johnson is like the ceiling projection for what Jahan Dotson can become in the NFL. Get him in an offense where he can command an elite target share that's going to be beneficial to him, and 150 plus target back end wide receiver 1 for fantasy is the type of ceiling that we're talking about for Jahan Dotson. Scheme fit in terms of what team I think he should go to, the absolute dream landing spot is for him to go to the Green Bay Packers. The rhythm-based offense that Green Bay runs with an accurate quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, a quarterback who loves reliable receivers like Jahan Dotson, a guy with elite separation ability and elite hands. This is Randall Cobb on crack, basically. If he goes to the Green Bay Packers, it's early season or early career Randall Cobb is what you're looking for out of Jahan Dotson if he goes to Green Bay. Just imagine right now if Deontay Johnson or Elijah Moore was traded to Green Bay, how much would they go up in dynasty value? That's kind of what I'm thinking with Jahan Dotson. That's the ceiling for him. That's what I'm hoping happens in the NFL draft. Fantasy outlook and upside. I'm officially a truther for Jahan Dotson because I have him ranked as my 7th overall player after grading him. As it currently stands, his keep trade cut value is 14th overall in Superflex League. So I'm quite a bit higher on him than consensus is. And maybe at some point later in the month before the draft, I might do a top 5 underrated prospects in the NFL draft and top 5 overrated prospects in the NFL draft type of video. So if he's available at the end of the first in your rookie draft, or in the mid first, even, I'm still willing to consider him there. And especially if he falls somewhere in like the early second round, even if he goes to a bad landing spot, like I said, even if he goes to like the Houston Texans or the Jacksonville Jaguars or something, this is still a guy I'm willing to spend a late first round, early second round pick on. And if he goes to a good landing spot, that's obviously a smash in that type of area. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video about Jahan Dotson. I'm glad I was able to be positive in this one, unlike the one for George Pickens, where I had to nitpick a lot about his game. Let me know in the comment section down below if you want me to do any more tail of the tapes. I kind of said that this one would be my last one because I have to dig into the rest of the rookie class, but I'm still probably willing to do like Sky Moore, Christian Watson, Desmond Ridder type of prospects if you guys really, really want to see them. So let me know down below what you think of Jahan Dotson, who you want to see next. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed this video. As always, check out the Patreon if you want more Dynasty and rookie content. Check out Underdog Fantasy if you guys want to get a head start on drafting and get ahead of the ADP. They have Superflex big boards going right now, rookies and sophomore drafts that are going to be closing around the time of the NFL draft. Use promo code FSE at sign up and first deposit for 100% match back on whatever you put in. And as a free gift, you'll also get our Dynasty Rankings Manifesto for free for using our promo code. So if you don't want to sign up on Patreon, but you want to get access to our Dynasty Rankings for your rookie draft, you can go to Underdog Fantasy and sign up over there. You don't only have to put in like 10, 20 bucks and you'll get in and get our Dynasty Rankings Manifesto for free. So if that interests you, go check that out. Peace out, guys. I'll talk to you soon.